Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today with me is Dave Wilkin, the CEO of 10kc.com. We'll talk about 10kc.com a little later. But first, let's talk about how the trend of decentralized work growth has impacted the new majority. So people who are underrepresented, women, BIPOC, and so on, how have they benefited from this new model? Can you tell me a little bit about that in your experience, Dave?
I think we all have realized over the last few years that decentralized work can work, and it actually allows us to work in many ways more efficiently. And for a lot of people, it's created more balance in their lives if done effectively, where think about someone like myself, you can be on a Zoom call and quickly run and do a load of laundry and then get back to work. And so it's allowed people to find a lot more balance. But at the same time, it's created a lot of proximity bias, and it's also decreased the natural connections that have happened in the everyday workplace, which can actually push some of those underrepresented colleagues to it can kind of push them away from the typical leadership exposure that they might have got from the office. So while it does bring some benefits to certain communities, there's also some new normals that have to be adjusted to.
And what do you find are the right ways of addressing some of the problems that you described with the proximity bias?
Well, I think this is, one of the biggest challenges we'll see with these organizations is how they leverage technology to create proximity, regardless of where you might be. So of course, how do you allow leaders to leverage technology, like 10kc.com to, based on skills, goals, interests, career paths, create connections between leaders and not rely on the water cooler or not rely on, serendipity to have these people bump into each other. I think a stat that a lot of leaders are shocked by is 60% of visible minority women have never had an informal connection with a leader. So 60% of visible minority women have not had an informal connection with leaders. Why does that matter? Informal connections are where 85% of career opportunities happen. It's where the best ideas take place. And so if leaders are not having these informal connections with underrepresented female talent, then the whole cascade of inclusion, starts to happen. And so technology can really allow leaders to remove bias and to create connection without requiring a water cooler to be written in between them and talent, and to actually make that more systematic and better.
Yeah, I helped 22 organizations figure out their transition to hybrid remote work, and that's always a part of the conversation, members of underrepresented groups. So what we've done in all of those organizations is set up mentoring and sponsorship programs specifically dedicated to underrepresented groups. I'm curious what your thoughts are on mentoring and sponsorship programs versus the use of technology for mentoring and sponsorship.
Well, we should work together on those because that's exactly what 10kc does. A lot of organizations have things like mentoring programs or onboarding buddies or sponsorship, but usually they're living on Excel spreadsheets or in the heads of their HR managers. And so while the intent is there, the execution can really benefit from a technology platform. And so, of course, I'm biased because I'm the founder of 10kc.com, but the reality is that you can use technology to increase reach, increase outcomes, and actually capture data from those existing programs like mentoring, sponsorship, high potentials, onboarding buddies. So really, I think when leaders have those programs, they should look at how technology can help remove bias, increase reach and engagement, which is, of course, what 10kc.com does every day for our clients. And I think the way leaders should look at it is, I think, a few decades ago, heads of learning, heads of HR, talent, everybody implemented learning platforms, right? They wanted people to take courses and classes and compliance training. And they used to do that on Excel spreadsheets or on the old-fashioned way. But then they got learning platforms where they can assign courses and assign experiences, and they could track and measure them. The next frontier is to do the same thing, but for mentoring, sponsorship, and networking. So how do you leverage a platform to build, manage, scale, and measure those experiences in the same way you might use things like LinkedIn Learning to do that with courses and classes?
Oh, that's intriguing. So definitely some of the organizations that I work with might benefit from that. Tell me a little bit more about how 10KC functions.
Yeah, so 10kc.com, we built it. For me as an LGBT entrepreneur, we were diversity founded from the beginning, and we saw that people that have relationships, and I think you can probably attest to this as well. If you have relationships, you learn more, you have more career opportunities, you're more part of the culture. The reality is relationships don't happen for everybody, and they don't happen in the same ways or the right ways. And so 10kc.com is the first technology platform that combines smart matching technology with learning technology. So you can match people together for mentoring, onboarding buddies, networking, all different types of programs from a single solution. So that's really what 10KC does, is we work with these organizations who might have mentoring or any of these programs today. And how do you 10 times them by by automating the matching, automating the conversation guides and curriculums to create outcomes, and also help leaders get visibility into progress outcomes like retention, engagement, and inclusion.
That's interesting. So I was particularly curious about the measurement aspects, because that's difficult to measure the impact of mentoring. You can see the mentor, the mentees, and how they're progressing. But I'm curious what you're doing to measure the in the moment impact of mentoring, because progress of mentees when they get a promotion is a lagging indicator.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Like, I think, step one is, I think and the challenge to any kind of HR talent or business leader is, I think today they don't have any data. They're not sure if they're reaching the right people. They're not sure if those matches are filled with bias or whether they're actually based on skills. And last is like, how is it actually driving the engagement outcomes, whether it's retention or upskilling or inclusion? So today, this whole world is kind of a black box of mystery, despite it being a lot of work and really critical for their engagement and decentralized work goals. So really, that's for the starting point. And I think we have to anchor ourselves in there, because the starting point is quite prehistoric in terms of where the technology might be. What we work with our clients on is ultimately driving retention, engagement, and their diversity, equity, inclusion goals, and being able to see those almost in real time. But the reality is, the leading indicators is, how do we reach more people? So adoption by team, group, department, geography. How do we real time know who is getting access to these programs, and how do we push them to the right people? The second is engagement. What's happening from these conversations? If it's a sponsorship program, are we getting sponsorship outcomes, which is different from an onboarding buddy program, right? Where an onboarding buddy program has different outcome sets. Things like, are people acclimatizing to the culture? Are they building a network to be productive? And so our platform allows by program to track all of those different data sets based on what are the goals and strategy that they're intended to solve.
So what kind of outcomes are you measuring, and what are you finding about the impact of the mentoring activities and the onboarding activities, the buddy activities? What kind of impact are they having on the mentees?
Yeah, I mean, and not just the mentees, but also the mentors. I think a surprising outcome, and people often say, well, what's the benefit to the mentees? Like you had just shared, but I'd encourage people to broaden their thinking, and actually people that are mentors can often develop even more than the mentees, right? The more you teach, the more you learn, the more you learn, the more you grow. Key outcomes is everything from adoption. So who are we reaching? Which groups, teams, departments? Are we increasing belonging, engagement, new skill development? And ultimately, are people moving roles? So we actually see people that go through our programs stay longer, get promoted faster, and actually contribute to the culture more. And so, of course, just like a learning platform, you can see who's taking the courses and how those courses are going. You can now apply that to all of the mentoring, networking, and skills development programs that are powered by 10kc.com.
Excellent. That sounds like a very useful platform. As we come to the end of our conversation, are there any last words that you wish to share with our audience that you haven't yet shared?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we have to help leaders think about is to do less with more, or to do more with less, especially given the headwinds that I think everyone's facing right now in the economy. And so many organizations have set diversity, equity, inclusion, and culture goals in the last 3 years. Right? I think every organization read their annual reports, but now they're going to be challenged to say, how do I do more with much less? And something that I would encourage people to think of is that's really where technology comes in. And within the talent and remote work stack, things like mentoring and networking are probably the most cost-effective ways to reach more employees and create more outcomes. It's a lot more cost-effective than flying everybody to New York City to have an all hands with their team. And so I'd really encourage people to think, while they're trying to sweat their current resources to get all they can, to start to think about how technology can really play a role.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on the show. That was very helpful. And thank you for the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet on whatever platform you're checking us out on, and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show, and it helps us improve the show. All right, everyone. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. In the meantime, the wisest and most profitable decisions to you, my friends.